Detective, it's O'Driscoll, right?
Correct.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to follow a little bit the same timeline just so we kind of keep things together. You said you reviewed the body cam that was provided on the night that Eric passed away, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that Corey made a statement that night to police, a written statement.
Correct.
Okay. And she told them that she had made a drink, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so they were aware of that. Was there anything in that body cam or investigation that talks about them looking for a glass that a drink had been made in?
No.
Okay. But you said that they searched for illicit drugs, correct?
I don't know if they searched for illicit drugs, but they searched the home.
Okay, so they searched the home that night knowing that he had a drink right before he went to bed and made no note that they had recovered glasses, looked for glasses, anything along those lines, correct?
Not to my understanding.
Okay. You also testified that when you interviewed CL, she was working on both a personal and, I'm going to say, professional capacity for Corey, correct?
Correct.
And she was cleaning houses, that she was both cleaning Corey's personal home, and then she would clean homes that were investment properties, correct?
CL told us that she cleaned both homes for Miss Richens' business, as well as at another time frame, she cleaned their personal home.
Okay.
So not necessarily at the same time.
But at the time, she was cleaning homes for the business, correct?
Which time are you referring to?
On or about the time leading up to or during your investigation, end of the year, end of 2021, beginning of 2022?
At that time, from my understanding, what CL told us, she was cleaning only investment properties belonging to the Richens Realty Company.
And she was getting compensated for that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and so the check that you issued the search warrant on for the bank, that was written from Corey's business account, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it could very well be that Corey was paying her for cleaning houses, correct?
I don't want to speculate, but
It could be,
it's
despite
possible.
what CL said, correct? Okay. You also testified that CL was progressing through her drug court program, and you were optimistic about how she would do in it, correct?
No, I testified that she was optimistic about her own personal
Sorry
recovery.
if I misstate that. How long were you investigating CL? When did you begin investigating CL?
I don't know an exact date, but the beginning of 2023.
Okay. And were you monitoring what she was doing at that time?
Yes.
Okay. Because you knew she had a boyfriend or this guy in Vegas, some other details about her life, correct?
Initially, at the outset of investigating CL, no, we didn't know all those details.
But over the course of your investigation, you learned them?
Correct.
Okay. Did you have CL's phone, correct?
Summit County Sheriff's Office evidence techs do.
But you've reviewed it?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified about text messages between CL and the defendant on or about this time period you're looking at in February, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you review any other information prior to that time about contact that CL and the defendant had had?
I'm unsure,
Did you even
but
look?
it's possible that we looked into communications. In this investigation, initial stages, we looked into communications with everybody that the defendant had been communicating with.
Okay. But you don't recall, or you didn't look for a pattern of communication between CL and the defendant, is that correct? You were focused on February?
I guess that depends on what stages of the investigation you're talking about.
I'm talking about any of them. Did you ever look and see if CL and the defendant texted each other about anything on a regular basis?
Yes.
Okay. And how far back did those go?
I'm not sure on exact dates again, but into 2021.
Okay. So for a period of time, because CL is working for the defendant, there's communication, correct?
Correct.
And nowhere in the communication between CL and defendant are there any text messages asking for drugs, correct?
We didn't find any, but there were also gaps in time frames in the phones when
Okay.
we looked at them.
Now, I want to also talk about, you said you didn't make any promises to CL, is that correct?
Correct. No specific promises.
Okay. You did, however, tell her, well, let me back up. When was the first interview you had with CL?
I believe it was April 28th or 26th. I believe it was the 26th.
Did you have any contact with her prior to that?
No.
Did anybody from law enforcement have contact with her prior to that?
Not from our office.
You don't know if anyone else talked to her?
I don't.
Okay. Now, part of this came out of a raid or something along the lines that was coordinated with at least ATF and some other agencies, correct?
CL's home was subject to a search warrant based on information that we had gathered during our investigation into CL.
Okay. And that search warrant would essentially contradict that she was doing well in what she was supposed to be doing in drug court, correct? She was buying drugs, wasn't she?
We didn't know that. We knew that she was associating with people that we knew had active warrants for drug charges.
Okay. And that would be a violation of drug court conditions, correct?
From my understanding, yes, but I don't know the details of that.
Okay. And as part of that search warrant, were individuals arrested?
CL was arrested, yes.
There were other individuals who were arrested too, correct?
I'm not recalling other individuals that were arrested on the date that the warrant was served.
Okay. Were any drugs recovered at the home?
Yes.
Okay. And you also recovered a firearm from CL's bedroom, correct?
Correct.
And that would be a violation of her drug court conditions, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, in this first interview in April, you begin the interview. Give me a moment here to find the right notes. By explaining to CL essentially how dire of a situation she's in, correct?
I don't have the interview memorized, but I know we talked about that, yes.
Okay, well, you told her that she was on probation to drug court for 4 first-degree felonies, correct?
Correct.
Okay, a violation of that is a potential prison sentence, correct?
It would depend on the prosecutor, but that's potentially true.
Okay, a first-degree felony carries a possible penalty of life in prison, correct?
I don't know. I would have to reference the code.
So you told her she was facing problems with that, correct? That
Correct.
this would be a violation. So she'd be on the hook for 4 first-degree felonies.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. And you also told her that having the firearm could potentially be a new crime, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then you also told her that the U.S. Attorney's Office was essentially on board with screening drug distribution charges, correct? I'm happy to play it if you don't remember.
I don't remember specifically.
Okay. Do you remember talking to her about potential federal charges?
Yes.
Okay. So she was aware that not only was she facing multiple first-degree felony prison sentences, she was also potentially facing federal charges, correct?
Correct.
And during that initial interview, she tells you that she didn't buy fentanyl, correct?
I don't know if she made that specific statement, but she talked about not knowing anything about fentanyl.
Okay. And that interview lasted about an hour and 19 minutes, hour and 20 minutes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that interview ends, well, with you telling her, well, several times you tell her to think through all of this and let you know if she wants to help, correct?
Yes, I gave her the opportunity to tell us up front whether she was willing to cooperate or if we should just not bother interviewing her anymore.
Okay. But this is after you essentially tell her that she has the potential of doing a considerable amount of state and federal prison time, potentially.
Yes, this is a common tactic in law enforcement to be able to leverage charges for information.
Okay. In fact, you did in this case leverage charges for information because you told her that you didn't care about first-degree felonies or federal charges. What you cared about was information about Corey getting drugs, correct?
I told her that I was interested in the information that she may know about this case.
Okay. But you told her also that Eric died of a fentanyl overdose, correct?
Correct.
And you told her that you thought that Corey gave him the drugs, correct?
I did not specifically say that.
You alluded to the fact that you needed information about Corey getting fentanyl because that's how Eric died, correct?
I don't know if I made that specific statement, but the information that we tried to convey to CL was that we wanted to know the information that she may have regarding Eric's death.
Okay. And you didn't care about any additional charges, all you cared about was that information, correct?
As I said previously, we expressed to her that the information that she may have was more valuable to us than seeking charges against her.
Okay. All right. And then you interview her 2 more times, is that right?
No, there were, I believe, 3 more after our first one.
Okay. Were all of those audio and video recorded?
Yes.
Okay. And those were turned over to the state in this case, correct? The state being the prosecutor's office? Okay. Now, forgive me because with all these interviews, I'm not sure which one comes from which. You, in subsequent interviews, tell CL that she needs to give good enough details that will ensure that Corey gets convicted of murder, correct?
I don't know if I made that specific statement, but I did express to her that the information that she gave us needed to be specific enough that we could corroborate it and that it could be presented to a courtroom.
Okay. And that she was, quote, screwed at this point for a minute or a few years if there's not cooperation, correct?
No, I never made such statement.
Okay. Did you ever tell her this was her get-out-of-jail-free card?
No, I did not.
Okay. Are you sure about that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, at some point, CL tells you that in one of the interviews that Corey contacted her between December and February to obtain prescription pills for an investor, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And she doesn't specifically state fentanyl at that point, correct?
Are you referring to CL?
I'm referring to CL.
I don't remember, but I don't believe so.
Okay. And in fact, I'm guessing it's something where around the second or third interview, CL says that those first pills, well, never says those first pills are fentanyl, correct? It never says that Corey asked for fentanyl, correct?
I'm sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Sorry. In those first, in the first transaction, so initially CL tells you that there were 3 transactions prior to Eric's death, correct?
Yes, and what I have to say here is that
Well, that was a yes or no question.
but none of the information that we got from CL was perfectly chronological. We had to piece it together over multiple interviews to come to the conclusion that we came to.
Because you told her you needed something more specific to ensure that Corey gets convicted, right?
No, we told her that we needed more details on what she was talking about and specific dates and times.
Okay. But in the first one, she says there's 3 transactions prior to Eric's death, correct?
At some point in our interviews, she told us there were 3 total transactions.
Okay. And she says that Corey was only looking for prescription pills or hydrocodone pills, to be specific, correct?
CL referred to them as Roxy's.
Okay. What do you know Roxy's to be?
They can be different things in the drug world. They can either be counterfeit pills that are meant to look like a prescription pill, or they can be actual prescription pills, but generally they're known to be opiate-based drugs, whether illicit or pharmaceutical.
Okay, so something along the lines of hydrocodone or Oxycontin or something along those lines, correct?
It could be, yes.
Okay. And she specifically says that she was looking for $900 worth of fentanyl pills, correct?
I don't know if initially, but she did make the statement of $900 at one point in one of our interviews.
Okay. And she says that Corey told her to leave the pills at an outdoor fire pit at the Midway house where there was cash, correct?
I don't know if she made that exact statement, but yes, she told us that at some point in part of the exchange that she was instructed to leave pills in an outdoor fire pit in a house in Midway.
Okay. And in fact, you sat there with her in this interview and did house searches, correct? Trying to figure out which house this was.
Yes.
Okay. Because she couldn't really tell you which house it was, correct?
She couldn't give us an address, but she was confident that she could find it if she could drive there.
Okay. And did you take her for a drive there?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever do any follow-up investigation on whether or not that house ever sold?
Yes.
Okay. And you know that that house sold sometime in January of 2022, correct?
From what I understand, yes.
Okay. So Ms. Richens no longer owned that home or occupied that home or had access to that home in February, correct?
I don't know.
Well, the house was owned by somebody else, right?
Again, I don't know.
Well, you said it closed in January of 2022.
From the information that I was told from other people, other investigators that had looked into that, I was told that Ms. Richens owned the house at some point and that it sold at some point. I don't know dates exactly. or
Okay, don't you
times.
think that date would be important if CL's telling you that she had access to the home and was there in February?
Possibly.
That might be a good fact to know. Okay. CL then does subsequent interviews, correct?
Yes, we had multiple interviews with her.
Okay. And after being told that she needs to be more specific, as your words are, correct? She now says that it was specifically fentanyl that Corey asked for, correct?
Correct.
And that she didn't actually take the pills to that house in Midway. It was a hand-to-hand transaction, correct?
Like I said, she went back and forth on her memory on which instances referred to which transactions. And ultimately, she told us that she was sure that the first transaction of fentanyl was a hand-to-hand transaction in her driveway.
Okay. And was what's been referred to as acquaintance 3, was that in regard to that transaction?
No,
Okay.
was the second transaction.
Were you ever to corroborate, was anyone with her that could corroborate that she saw CL hand Corey drugs?
Not that I know of.
And then she states that now there was a third transaction that occurred after Eric's death, correct?
She didn't make the statement that it was after Eric's death, but she told us there were 3 total transactions.
Okay. So the information contained in the state's amended information, you don't know where that came from?
Which information are you referring
That
to?
she purchased drugs after Eric's death?
Yes, I do know where it came from.
Okay. And you're saying CL did not sell drugs to Corey after Eric's death?
CL could not remember specific dates and did not make mention that the transaction happened after Eric's death. But when presented with digital evidence from other witnesses, she confirmed that that was most likely correct.
Okay. So she just agreed with your scenario of events, correct?
No, in fact, several times during our interviews, she told us that as we presented her more information, it helped her remember more.
Okay. So as you're telling her to be more specific, you're providing her with information that you're gaining in the case, and she's saying, now I remember. Accurate?
Yes.
All right. You also testified that you interviewed 2 of Eric's best friends, right?
Yes.
Okay. And during one of those interviews, so I'm going to go back to CL for just a second. On this transaction that you allege that this check was used for, or the state alleges this check was used for, you testified that she picked up the check that was written on Corey's business account and cashed it, right?
Correct.
And drove to the Maverick and purchased fentanyl.
She didn't drive, but she was.
Someone
driving.
drove her,
Yes.
okay? And the person with her corroborates that.
Correct.
And that third witness never saw CL give those drugs to Corey, correct? Acquaintance 3 never saw that?
Acquaintance 3 didn't tell us that he ever saw that, no.
Okay. In fact, there's no independent witness to corroborate that CL gave Ms. Corey those drugs, correct?
No eyewitnesses that we have identified, but the investigation is ongoing.
Correct. And CL is currently out of custody, right?
Depends on your definition of custody, but she's not incarcerated, no.
Not incarcerated, she's on, I think, ankle monitor and not to leave the county, right?
Correct.
But following your interviews with her, she was released from jail.
Not immediately, no. She worked with the prosecutor in the other county where her drug court is and came to a resolution as to those charges against her. And part of that was being released on ankle monitor.
Okay, so in exchange for the testimony, or not testimony, in exchange for the information that she provided to you, and a deal was worked out where she was placed, essentially released from jail on the order to show cause, correct?
I don't know the specifics of what went on between the prosecutor and CL,
Okay.
but subsequent to our interviews, we reached out to the prosecutor's office and let them know that she was being cooperative. After that, I was not involved in any decisions regarding her release.
Okay, because that's up to the judge and whatnot.
Correct.
But you did communicate that to prosecutors?
Yes.
That she gave you the information you needed?
That she was being cooperative with our investigation, yes.
All right, I want to turn now to your interview, and I'm going to use initials. Are you okay with that? Okay. You had an interview with one of Eric's friends. His initials are JS. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. That interview occurred about April 20th. Is that correct?
That seems right. I don't know a specific date, but
Okay. And during that interview, he discussed, or you discussed with him, that he and another individual were essentially Eric's best friends, correct?
Ms. Lozera, my apologies.
Yes.
April 20th of which year?
Oh, 2023.
Three.
I apologize.
Thank you.
At any point during that interview, did JS mention that Eric had said that at any point during he and Corey's marriage, he was concerned that Corey was attempting to poison him?
I don't recall, but I don't think so.
Okay. In fact, you present him essentially 3 scenarios of what could have happened to Eric, correct? That he potentially did it to himself knowingly, that someone else did it to him, or that it was accidental, right? Okay. And you specifically ask him if he thinks Corey would have done it, and he says, no, in my gut, I don't believe so, correct?
I don't know if that was a direct quote, but yes, he said that he didn't believe that she would have done it.
And he also states during that interview that at the time of his death, Eric and Corey's marriage was in a really good place.
Yes.
Correct? Now, he also details or talks about a falling out that he and Eric had over the course of their friendship, correct?
Yes, that sounds familiar.
And that Eric and his other friend that he refers to in this interview actually had a falling out right before Eric passed away, correct?
Yes.
You also talk about where he talks about the fact that, you know, all three of them at different times had marital problems that they had helped each other through, correct?
JS told me that he and Eric and their other friend would confide in each other about their marriages and would share information, and that was how he had the insight that he had into Eric's life.
Okay. He also talks about that Eric changed or created these trust documents, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And his understanding, based on what he said that Eric told him, was because Eric was pissed or upset about a relationship that Corey had, correct? Or he thought she had.
I don't remember the specifics of that part of the interview, but I do remember that JS was aware that Eric had made the trust.
Okay. And he doesn't specifically say anywhere in that interview that the trust was made because he was mad about this home equity loan, correct?
JS expressed to us that he understood that the reason that Eric created the trust was to ensure his son's well-being if anything were to happen to him.
Okay. And he also expresses to you that because you asked him why it wasn't changed back, or because the sister was made the trustee, correct? And
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
the sister, so in those trust documents, sorry, that was a terrible question. In those trust documents, the sister was made the trustee, correct?
From what I understand, yes.
And you asked JS specifically, or somewhere along the lines of, if they were doing so well, why would he have not changed that back? Right?
Yes.
Okay. And he tells you that it was his way of ensuring that even if they were doing well at the time, if there was a divorce, he would get the last word in it, right?
I remember him using that phrase, getting the last word, yes.
All right. Now, you also testified today about this hunt that took place down in Mexico, right? Correct? And this hunt was February of 2022, correct?
I don't know specific dates, but I'm aware that Eric was on a hunt in Mexico shortly before his death.
Okay. And JS tells you that he was really upset, actually leading in the days right before he passed away, about what had happened with this hunt, right?
Yes.
And he was upset that they had paid an outfitter for a number of permits that they believed the outfitter had procured, correct?
Yes, from what I'm recalling, he was upset about the outfitter or the guide had not gotten enough permits for the amount of animals that they ended up taking, and it caused some concerns over legal requirements of tagging animals.
Okay. And getting the cape or anything else, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this is the same, is this outfitter the person that you investigated? Or that you interviewed?
Someone associated with that hunt and that outfit, yes. I'm not sure the exact association, but a contact for that outfitter.
Okay. So that outfitter was aware that they had made some serious problems for Eric with regard to how many animals they took in Mexico, correct?
According to JS, yes.
And in your subsequent investigation, you know that Eric had had some heated conversations, actually, the night before he passed, or the night that he passed away, with that outfitter, correct?
We received information about that, yeah.
Okay. In fact, he was searching how far it was to drive from Scottsdale down there, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, his phone showed that search.
Okay. And JS also told you that he had information or believed that this outfitter was somehow connected to the cartel, correct?
I don't recall. That sounds familiar, but I don't recall if those were the words that he used.
But essentially, he was
He
made reference.
JS made a statement about the cartel when he was talking about Eric and that hunt, yes.
Okay.
Counsel, would you approach for a minute?
Yes.
Will you turn the white noise on for me for a minute? My apologies, 1 second. You come here for a second. Or, what's that? No, we're good. We're going to take a break. Do you mind clearing the gallery first, and then we'll reverse the process on the way back? All right.
So everybody passed the...
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, no, you're fine. So, ladies and gentlemen, I need to handle an issue with some members of the media that are live streaming this hearing without permission to do so. This is a good opportunity to take a restroom break. We're going to reverse the process we used on the way in. If the gallery would please follow the deputy's instructions, proceed orderly on the way out. We'll let you stretch your legs. We'll come back in about 20 minutes. Thank you.